He was the $6 million man, unstoppable, admired, living the dream. She was television royalty with a smile that could light up any room. Together, they seemed like the ultimate Hollywood power couple. But behind the glossy magazine covers, the reality was far darker. Their story spiraled into heartbreak, betrayal, and decades of silence. Lee Majors never forgave her, and once you hear the truth, you'll understand exactly why. Before their names became etched into American pop culture, Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were just two bright-eyed actors chasing a dream in a world as glamorous as it was ruthless. Lee, born Harvey Lee Myers in Michigan and raised in Kentucky, had rugged good looks and a quiet confidence that casting directors couldn't ignore. He earned his first real break on the Big Valley, starring alongside Barbara Stanwyck, quickly proving he had the talent and presence of a true star. Farrah, a Southern beauty queen from Texas, had a magnetic charm and sun-kissed hair that made her camera-ready before anyone even knew her name. She moved to Los Angeles to model, and the industry took notice immediately. Photographers, agents, and producers were captivated. She seemed to radiate glamour and approachability all at once, a rare combination. They met in the late 1960s at a friend's party. Those who were there say the chemistry was instant. Lee was already a rising television star. Farrah was just beginning her climb. Yet something clicked. Lee was grounded, loyal, quiet. Farrah was vibrant, funny, full of energy. Together, they seemed unstoppable. They married in 1973, and for a moment, Hollywood looked perfect. Lee had just landed what would become his defining role, Colonel Steve Austin in The $6 Million Man. The show was a sensation. Millions tuned in each week, and Lee's face was plastered everywhere, from action figures to lunchboxes to magazine covers. Meanwhile, Farrah's career was taking off. She graced shampoo commercials, magazine spreads, and small acting roles. Her big break was on the horizon, and Lee was proud. He openly praised her talent and beauty, calling her the love of his life. To the public, they were golden. Red carpet events, celebrity parties, magazine covers. They had it all. But behind closed doors, cracks were forming. Their schedules rarely aligned. Lee's long hours on set left Farrah navigating auditions and networking alone. Fame, the very thing they had worked so hard to achieve, began pulling them apart. Lee held on as best he could. He believed in their love. He believed in their marriage. But fame has a way of changing people, not always for the worse, but sometimes in ways that make them strangers to each other. And just as Farrah's star was about to rise higher than anyone imagined, their picture-perfect marriage faced pressures no outsider could foresee. Farrah Fawcett didn't just rise to fame, she exploded into it. In 1976, when she joined the cast of Charlie's Angels, everything changed overnight. The show was an instant cultural phenomenon. But Farrah Fawcett didn't just become another television actress. She became the face of a generation. A symbol of glamour, independence, and effortless beauty. The poster that launched 1,000 teenage crushes, Farrah in that red one-piece, wind-swept hair, radiant smile. It sold over 12 million copies and became one of the most iconic images of the 20th century. Suddenly, she was everywhere. Talk shows, magazine covers, billboards, product endorsements. Farrah was not just popular. She was inescapable, and while millions adored her, the meteoric rise of her fame placed enormous strain on a marriage already showing cracks. Farrah was being pulled in every direction: producers, brands, stylists, publicists. Time became a luxury she could no longer afford. Lee Majors, the $6 Million Man, was used to long hours on set, but even he couldn't prepare for the whirlwind that had entered their home. The woman he had married, the sweet, grounded Texas girl, was evolving into someone else entirely. Not colder, not unkind, just distant. Consumed by the relentless machine of celebrity. Sources confirmed that Lee even asked the show's producers to adjust her filming schedule so they could have dinner together a few nights a week. A simple request, a husband wanting time with his wife. But Farrah reportedly declined. She didn't want to appear dependent. She was determined to stand on her own. That fierce independence, while admirable, only widened the emotional gap between them. Lee later recalled that at the height of her fame, he sometimes saw Farrah only 2 days a week. And even then, those encounters weren't meaningful. They were fragments of a once close bond, reduced to brief calendar slots between photo shoots and promotional appearances. Love and patience weren't enough. The pain wasn't just about fame. It was about what her success represented, a shift in priorities, values, and emotional connection. The woman who once leaned on him for support was now carrying an empire on her own. Somewhere along the way, they stopped speaking the same emotional language. Lee had always believed in traditional marriage, a sacred bond meant to last a lifetime. Farrah was rewriting her identity in real time in front of the world, leaving no room to slow down. She wasn't trying to hurt him, but fame has collateral damage, and their marriage became one of its first casualties. By the late 1970s, the emotional distance between them was impossible to ignore. The love that had once drawn them together was buried under fame, career demands, and long stretches of absence. Married in name only, they were living separate lives, two stars orbiting entirely different galaxies. Farrah's calendar was packed with shoots, appearances, and endorsements. Lee carried the weight of his own career, watching helplessly as his personal life unraveled. He tried again and again, reaching out, making time, even enlisting friends to help them reconnect. But Farrah had already begun to move on, perhaps unconsciously, and then came the final blow, a man. Not just any man, Ryan O'Neal. A man who wasn't a stranger to Lee, but whose presence would shatter what little remained of their marriage, and do so for the entire world to see. He was a fellow actor, a peer, once a trusted friend. Their paths had crossed countless times in Hollywood. So when Lee saw tabloid photos of Ryan O'Neal and Farrah holding hands, laughing at events, the sting was immediate and deeply personal. Their affair became tabloid gold. Farrah was still legally married to Lee when the relationship went public. Magazine spreads, late-night jokes, endless speculation. To the outside world, it was a glamorous scandal. To Lee, it was a knife to the heart. Friends say he was blindsided. No call, no warning. Just glossy photos and sensational headlines. And the man she chose, someone Lee had welcomed into his life, that betrayal cut deeper than anything else. Some insiders suggest Farrah's relationship with Ryan may have begun while she and Lee were still trying to repair their marriage. The timeline remains murky. What is undeniable is how utterly humiliated Lee felt. Not just as a husband, but as a man who had built a life with someone now rewriting their story in real time. Farrah never denied it. She and Ryan were everywhere together, quickly branded the new Hollywood power couple. But behind the smiles, an unspoken truth lingered. Something sacred had been broken. Lee never publicly lashed out. He never named names, never aired grievances. Instead, he withdrew. He stopped attending events with her, refused interviews on personal matters, and eventually stopped talking about her at all. To the world, it seemed he had moved on. Those closest to him knew better. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had lost trust, privacy, and faith in the life he thought they shared. With Ryan O'Neal's face now inseparable from the end of his marriage, forgiveness was no longer possible. Rather than confront the chaos, Lee did something few expected. He disappeared from her world completely. He stayed silent. In Hollywood, a town where everyone eventually tells their side, he gave none. No interviews, no memoirs, no subtle jabs in the press. Just silence. By the time their divorce was finalized in 1982, nearly 9 years after their wedding, Lee had already stepped away emotionally. He immersed himself in work, taking on television roles that kept him busy, but never reignited the fire of his $6 million man days. The Fall Guy gave him visibility, but behind the scenes, friends say he was never truly the same. Farrah, meanwhile, leaned fully into the spotlight. Her rocky, public relationship with Ryan O'Neal, breakups, reconciliations, arguments, laughter, played out across tabloid pages. Her emotional life had become public property, and Lee? He was absent. When Charlie's Angels reunions happened, he was nowhere to be seen. His silence spoke volumes. When Farrah made public appearances, Lee was never seen nearby. It wasn't bitterness driving him away. It was self-preservation. a man protecting himself from reopening old wounds. In the rare moments interviewers brought up Farrah, Lee offered polite, measured answers and moved on. He once admitted, almost in passing, that he didn't watch Charlie's Angels when it aired. The reason? Too painful. Seeing her larger than life on screen, while knowing all that had been lost, was more than he could bear. Perhaps the most telling detail of all. Lee never tried to set the record straight. He never blamed Farrah. He never trashed Ryan. He never played the victim. Instead, he chose to disappear entirely from her public world. Once she was gone, his only control was to vanish. Privately, friends say the wound remained. Lee dated, yes, but no one ever filled the space Farrah had occupied. For nearly 2 decades, he stayed unmarried, focused on work, and kept his personal life tightly guarded. Those who knew him described him as kind, but distant, charming yet more guarded than before. Meanwhile, Farrah remained unmistakably herself, beloved, bold, constantly in the headlines, and unafraid to wear her emotional scars in public. Her career had highs and lows, her relationship with Ryan was turbulent, but she continued to live openly, while Lee closed the door and threw away the key. Yet years later, something unexpected almost happened. A quiet, private opportunity that could have rewritten everything. It was the early 2000s. Farrah had entered a quieter phase, focusing on artwork, charity, and smaller acting projects. Her stormy relationship with Ryan had cooled. Lee, too, had mellowed, no longer the intense action star of the 70s, but a respected actor with decades of experience behind him. Then a mutual friend approached them, separately, about the possibility of reconnecting. The proposal was simple. No cameras, no headlines. Just a private meeting. A chance to talk. Perhaps even laugh. Perhaps finally clear the air after decades of silence. At first, it seemed like both were open to the idea. Farrah, it was said, had softened to the idea of seeing Lee again. Time had mellowed the old emotions, and she had once loved him deeply. Lee, for his part, was more hesitant. He listened. He thought. Privately, he admitted that part of him missed the person she used to be. And then he said no. He was not angry. Not bitter. He simply could not go back. Too much had happened. Too much time had passed. Some wounds, especially the unspoken ones, never fully heal. His years of silence had not just been about dignity. They had been about protection. Seeing her again, even for a moment, would have reopened a chapter he had worked hard to close. Not long after, Farrah was diagnosed with cancer. Her condition deteriorated rapidly, and any chance of reconciliation vanished. Lee never visited. He never reached out publicly. To outsiders, it might have seemed cold. But to those who knew him, it was heartbreak in its quietest, most private form. Lee had already said goodbye long before the world knew she was sick. When the diagnosis became public in 2006, Farrah chose to document her battle in a raw, deeply personal video diary. Millions watched, many cried, and yet one person remained silent. Lee Major followed her condition quietly from afar, grieving privately. There was no anger, no resentment, only sorrow. But he could not step back into that chapter. The past, he knew, was too permanent. When Farrah passed away in June 2009, Lee released a single measured statement. She fought a tremendous battle against a terrible disease. She was an angel on earth, and now she is an angel forever. No funeral attendance, no public displays of grief. Some said he could not face it. Others believed he had already mourned her long before she was gone. Whatever the truth, Lee chose distance, remembering her quietly, privately, with the weight of decades of love and loss. Time rewrites stories. Today, when people look at Lee and Farrah, they see nostalgia. A golden-era couple, young, glamorous, smiling at red carpet events as if nothing went wrong. But those who followed their journey know the truth was far more complicated. Lee eventually moved on. In 2002, he married again, this time outside the Hollywood spotlight. It was a quieter, stable chapter that brought him peace. Yet even with a new life, Farrah's shadow lingered. She had been his first great love and his greatest heartbreak. Farrah, too, left a lasting legacy. She fought for serious acting roles, earned critical acclaim later in her career, and faced her illness with courage and honesty. But the story between them remained unfinished. No final conversation, no public reconciliation. No moment of closure for the two who had once meant everything to each other. For fans, the mystery lingers. Did Lee ever truly forgive her? Did she want him to? Perhaps the answer lies in the silence that followed her passing. He never attacked her publicly. He never sought to reclaim the narrative. Instead, he preserved what remained, quietly, privately, beyond the gaze of cameras. Because in the end, the woman Lee Majors never fully forgave might also have been the woman he never truly stopped loving.